nobody prepared people for this version of Alexa Demie, and maybe that's exactly why her return feels so loud, so uncomfortable, and so impossible to ignore. When Euphoria Season 3 finally brought her back after years of near silence, it didn't feel like a typical she's back moment. It felt like the internet hit pause and collectively went, wait, we missed something. Because this isn't just about a celebrity reappearing, it's about someone stepping back into a spotlight that kept moving without them, into an audience that kept evolving without them, and into expectations that quietly grew while she was gone. And now that she's here again, instead of simply watching her return, people are trying to decode her. They're studying her appearance, her energy, her presence, comparing her to a version of herself that exists in their memory, not in real time. And when the two don't match perfectly, the reaction isn't curiosity, it's suspicion. It's questions that sound like concern, but quickly turn into conclusions. She looks different. She looks thinner. She looks off. And from there, the theories start stacking. Cosmetic procedures, extreme dieting, pressure from the industry, hidden struggles, substance use. Narratives built not on facts, but on the discomfort of not understanding what changed. But here's the part that gets lost in all of this. People are reacting to the absence just as much as the return. Because while her co-stars like Sydney Sweeney, Zendaya, and Jacob Elordi stayed visible, constantly working, constantly evolving in front of the public eye, Alexa chose something completely different. She stepped away. Not loudly, not dramatically, just gradually, until she wasn't part of the daily conversation anymore, and in a culture that thrives on constant visibility, that kind of silence doesn't just create mystery, it creates a gap that people feel the need to fill. So when she comes back, it's not just she looks different, it's we don't recognize her the way we think we should, and that discomfort turns into scrutiny. And the thing is, Alexa was never built in the same way as the system she entered. She didn't grow up in Hollywood. She wasn't molded from childhood to handle press tours, branding strategies, or public expectations. Yes, her mother worked as a makeup artist, which gave her some proximity. But proximity isn't the same as preparation. Her path into the industry was uneven, uncertain, and full of rejection. She's spoken about how many times she heard no, how often she felt overlooked, especially as a Latina actress who didn't fit the narrow mold that leading roles often fall into. There were moments where she questioned everything, where continuing didn't feel worth it anymore. So when Euphoria came along, it wasn't just an opportunity, it was validation. It was the moment that proved she could exist in that space. But what people expected next was momentum. More roles, more visibility, more expansion, and instead, she did something that doesn't make sense to the industry. She slowed down. She became selective, careful, intentional. She didn't chase every offer. She didn't flood the market with her presence. She protected her image in a way that felt almost out of sync with how fame usually works now. And that decision, it created distance between her and the audience that had just discovered her. And then there's the layer that makes everything even more complicated, the resurfaced controversy from her role in mid-90s. That moment didn't just disappear over time. It stayed in the background, waiting to be pulled back into the conversation the moment her name became relevant again. The scene, the age gap, the discomfort people felt watching it, and the way Alexa spoke about it afterward, it all left an impression that people never fully let go of. And now, with her back in the spotlight, it's being re-examined, reinterpreted, and added to the larger narrative people are building around her. Fair or not, it becomes part of how people try to understand her choices, her career, and even her absence. But beyond the headlines, beyond the speculation, beyond the comparisons, there's a human reality that doesn't fit neatly into any of these narratives. Alexa has openly talked about struggling to separate herself from her character, Maddie. And that might sound like a small detail, but it isn't. Because when your identity starts blending with a role that intense, while your real life is simultaneously being reshaped by fame, it can blur boundaries in ways that are hard to explain. You're not just acting anymore. You're absorbing, reflecting, carrying pieces of that character into your everyday life. And when the cameras stop, those pieces don't just disappear. Add to that the pressure of public attention, the expectations placed on women in the industry, and the constant awareness that you're being watched, judged, and analyzed, and it becomes a lot harder to stay grounded in who you are. And then there's where she came from. Not the polished version people like to imagine, but the reality she's actually described. Growing up around instability, being exposed to unsafe environments, leaving home young, moving from place to place, figuring life out without a clear safety net. That kind of background shapes you in ways that don't just fade away when success arrives. It builds resilience, yes, but it also means you carry things with you. And when you step into an industry like Hollywood, where everything is amplified, pressure, expectations, scrutiny, that weight doesn't disappear. If anything, it becomes harder to manage. So when people look at her now and say, she's changed, maybe the more honest response is, of course she has. How could she not? But the internet doesn't really sit with that kind of nuance. It wants answers that are quick, clear, and easy to share. It wants a reason for every difference, a story for every change. So instead of allowing her return to just be, it turns into something to analyze. Every clip gets slowed down, every photo gets compared, every expression gets interpreted. And while some of that is framed as concern, a lot of it crosses into something else. Something that feels less like care and more like control. Like people need to understand her in order to feel comfortable with her again. And that's where this stops being about Alexa and starts being about something bigger, because this isn't the first time the internet has done this, and it won't be the last. We build people up, we create an image of who they are, and when they step away and come back different, we don't adjust that image. We question them instead. So maybe the real question isn't, what happened to Alexa, Demie? Maybe it's why we expect people to stay the same just because we stopped watching them for a while. Why we feel entitled to explanations for changes that are, in reality, a normal part of being human. And why someone returning after taking space has to be turned into a moment of scrutiny instead of a moment of quiet understanding. Because the truth is, whatever Alexa has been through, whether it's personal, professional, or something we'll never fully know, it's likely far more complex than anything being said online right now. And maybe the most respectful thing isn't to solve her, analyze her, or even fully understand her, but to let her exist in this new chapter without demanding that she explain every piece of how she got there. But I'm curious. What do you think? Do you feel like the internet is genuinely concerned about her, or do you think this has turned into something way more invasive than people want to admit? Do you respect the way she stepped back and moved differently from her co-stars? Or do you think that distance is exactly what made this comeback feel so jarring? And do you think moments like this say more about the celebrity or about the audience watching them? Let's talk about it, because this isn't just about one actress. It's about how we react when someone doesn't come back the way we expected.